What's going on, everybody? Dr. Michael here from Sidelines Sports Performance, and wanted to talk a little bit more about the unfortunate incident that occurred during the Super Bowl last weekend, during which Dre Greenlaw went to go run out from the sidelines onto the field after a punt return and unfortunately tore his Achilles tendon. And if you watch the video, nothing really happened. All he did was he just pushed off of that foot and pop, that Achilles tendon went ahead and ruptured. And unfortunately, he ended up being removed from the game, and he recently had surgery, I believe either yesterday or the day before, to repair that Achilles tendon. We've seen a lot of Achilles tendon tears during this NFL season, so I wanted to do a little bit of a recap video about what we know in terms of what is causing this Achilles tendon rupture epidemic, so to speak, within the NFL. So just wanted to do a quick recap about some anatomy when we take a look at the Achilles tendon in the back of the foot. So all of your calf muscles, they come down and they attach to the back of your heel through this really robust elastic tendon called the Achilles tendon, right? And so if we look at this diagram, most Achilles tendon ruptures don't occur at the tendon bone interface right at the back of the heel. Instead, they occur about 2 centimeters north of that mark, right where that split is in this diagram. And so the reason for that is that right at that area where the tendon ruptures is the least amount of blood flow. Remember, blood flow provides the most amount of healing nutrients for an area. So if an area has really low blood supply, its healing capacity or its injury potential is not in its favor. And so this is where most Achilles tendon ruptures occur. When an athlete has an Achilles tendon rupture, 99% of the time, they are repaired surgically. And what the surgeon does is he ties and sutures the two tendon ends together, oftentimes described as kind of like trying to sew two wet mop ends together. It takes about 6 to 9 months to fully recover. So we're seeing some different timelines emerge this season. So we'll be on the lookout for 2024-2025 NFL season to see which timeline seems to be the most effective for these high-level athletes. So the question that everybody's asking is, why during this past NFL season did we see so many players go down with an Achilles tendon injury? And in the beginning of the season, when Aaron Rodgers went down, there was a lot of talk about, oh, it's because the artificial turf, and that creates more of a stiff environment for the players to play on, which then increases the demand or the load for the Achilles tendon, and it can't keep up with that really, really hard, firm surface of the artificial turf. However, we're starting to see some other factors bubble up as well, one of which is just the fact that some of the shoe wear is a little bit different. Another concept is more revolving around the potential use of anabolic steroids, where the muscle is stronger than the tendon can keep up with, and then therefore the tendon just finally fails and gives out and ruptures. But that's kind of a whole different can of worms. Right now, the consensus is trending towards more of the training and the strength and conditioning programs that these athletes are undergoing during the off season. And one of the most important training methods for high-level athletes is to involve plyometrics. And so plyometrics, or jump training, involves the stretch shortening cycle. So jump training is really important for athletes because it exposes them to that stretch shortening cycle. So what exactly is that? If we take a look at jump training, as we can see in this diagram, the first picture shows that descent where the athlete dips into a jump position. What that does is that provides an eccentric or lengthening stretch to both the muscles and the tendons around the lower body. From there, there's this amortization phase, which is kind of like this dead space. And that's as the athlete translates from their descending eccentric, there's a brief pause, and then they go into the actual jump or the shortening part where the muscles engage, and that's where your power develops. And so what we want is we want to really spend some time doing this type of training, because as the athlete descends into that eccentric and that lengthening under tension phase, that provides a lot of resilience. It provides an opportunity for the tendons around the knee, the hip, as well as the Achilles tendon to really generate a lot more power production in a more dynamic environment and decrease the risk for injury or a rupture. And so unfortunately, what we're seeing is we're seeing more strength-based training, so things like squats, sled pushes, things like that, and less plyometric training and less of this stretch shortening cycle, which is now exposing a potential injury risk for Achilles tendon ruptures. Oftentimes we'll refer to plyometric training as kind of like loading a spring, right? You compress that spring and you load a lot of tension on there, and then you release it and there's a lot of power production on there. And what this does, like I mentioned before, is it really builds a lot of robust resiliency within your patellar tendon, within your Achilles tendon, and some of the other structures around your lower body. And this is going to be really important for athletes moving forward to implement a little bit more of that plyometric training. Sometimes it's seen as not as sexy as doing like a 500-pound squat, or you see guys like James Harrison pushing, an obscene amount of 45-pound plates on a sled across a turf training center. And that looks super cool for social media. But, at the end of the day, us as sports medicine professionals and strength and conditioning staff, we need to make sure that we're doing right by the players. As much as we can, we're going to really try to decrease the risk for subsequent or future injury for these players. And so it'll be interesting to see how this is addressed in the offseason moving forward. It'll be interesting as well to see the incidence of Achilles tendon ruptures moving forward into the 2024-2025 NFL season as well.